Hey everyone, it's Bethany. Welcome back to my craft room and welcome if you're joining for the first time. In this video, I am already on row 3 of my Spring Showers quilt. It is coming together so beautifully. And every time I get a row done and everything gets bigger and bigger, it just gets so gratifying to see it actually happening. So it's something that I've really wanted to try and do. So I'm really excited to see it all come to fruition. So we're going to do a block for row 3 today, and at the end I'll show you the entire row all sewn together. And I think you're really going to like this block today because we're going to be working with vinyl and Mylar, which are both really unique materials when it comes to machine embroidery and applique. They're fun to use, they're easy to use, and I hope this inspires you. So go ahead and give this a thumbs up if you're ready to see the next block and see the whole next row come together. Okay, so we are going to do the block called A Good Puddle, and again we're working on row 3. And the reason I thought it would be fun to do this particular block is because I thought that the items that we're going to be using and the materials we're going to be using are really unique and fun. So if you haven't yet worked with a vinyl or Mylar before, then this is going to be a really fun tutorial to watch because they are some unique materials that we are going to be putting on our quilt block. So let's go ahead, and first we are going to get our hoop all ready to go with our stabilizer. I am using a light cutaway and I use Kimberbell's. I think it's very beautiful. I've really enjoyed working with it, so I just keep ordering it again and again. And I will link the little snap bands as well down in the description box below. They are super helpful. Okay, so I'm going to be using my mighty hoop. So I'm going to just grab the bottom, place my little piece of stabilizer so that it covers, and then just kind of center it and then snap. And that actually did really well. I just like to always go through and kind of give it a little tightening just so it's really tight, and we are all set to go. Okay, another thing is, besides the vinyl, so it's like a nice blue, so we're going to be using that, and then we're going to be using the Mylar, of course. Besides that, we're going to have a piece of batting, and again, everything will be linked in the description box below. And then we also have our background fabric. Now with my fabric, I do back it with the fusible backing, which I have here. I really like it. It helps to keep the puckering at bay, and it also just really makes that fabric nice and, what do I want to say, just really nice and firm, so that when you're doing your trimming, which we won't be really doing in this particular block, but when you put it on your pieces that you applique, it really helps the trimming process and helps everything just be really nice and clean. So again, I backed it. I just ironed it onto the back. It's adhesive and it's really nice to work with. Okay, other than that, we are all ready to go. I have my Kimberbell tape, which is going to be very helpful. And then I have my scissors here, and I think we are all set. So I have everything ready on my embroidery machine. We are first going to start with getting our batting ready. So we're going to do the the placement stitch for the batting. We'll lay the batting down and do the tack down stitch so that we can secure it. We'll trim, place our fabric, and go right into background quilting, but I'll walk you right through it. Okay, I have a nice green thread in my machine. That way you can really see these placement stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch out the placement stitch for our batting. Okay, now I have my placement stitch, as you can see, and that is just a guide so that we know where to put our material next. So in this case, the material is the batting, so I'm going to make sure that I cover that placement stitch completely. You can tape this down if you'd like, and then I'm going to go ahead and run the tack down stitch to secure it to the stabilizer. Okay, so now we have the tack down stitch, and I will go ahead and grab my little snips here and simply trim around so that I can take all of that excess batting off. This is really important because this is what allows us to not have batting in the seams, and I've been trying to remind you of that in each video that I'm doing for this quilt. But this is amazing because the next placement stitch is a tad bigger than this. We're going to have another square that's a tad bigger for our fabric, and I believe it's 1/4 of an inch bigger, or roughly, and that allows us to keep the batting out of the seams so that we don't have really bulky seams when we are sewing our quilt blocks together. So it's kind of hard to visualize until you start doing it, but it's genius on Kimberbell's part. I love it, and it makes sewing the little quilt blocks together so clean and so easy. Okay, so now I have trimmed around, allowing me to take off the rest of the batting. Now we're going to return this to the hoop. We are going to stitch the next placement stitch, which will be for our fabric, and then we'll go ahead and do the tack down stitch to secure the fabric and go right into background quilting. Okay, I want to take the hoop off so that you can really see the next placement stitch. And I really want to show you this because you see how that next placement stitch is, just roughly 1/4 of an inch or maybe a smidge more than the original batting. And that's going to allow us to not have batting in our seams. So once you see it, it really makes a lot of sense. So the next step here is placing our fabric down. Again, you definitely can tape this down. It's just the right size for my hoop here, so I feel like it kind of secures it just fine without tape. And then really quickly, I'm going to go ahead and change my thread color, because right after we do the tack down stitch, we will go right into the background quilting, which is the beautiful Rain. I can't remember if it's called Weather 1 or Weather 2, but it's one of my favorites. I think orange, no, the geometric one is my favorite. It's like the honeycomb beehive look. It's so pretty, but this one is a close second for me. Okay, so let me just make sure this is not bunched up at all. Okay, here we go. Okay, so the background quilting is done. Now I am going to change out my thread color to this kind of nice teal turquoise. I thought this would be nice for the puddle, and we're going to start working on that for a little while before we do our text. So really quickly, I'm just going to pull this through and change up my thread. Now, be sure to know you can do anything you want on your quilt. So you can do any thread colors you like. You can really make it unique. So make sure you take those creative decisions and make those creative decisions as you go, and do whatever you please. Okay, let's do the placement stitch real quick. Okay, so here is the background quilting. So it's really nice. You have some diagonal lines, but then you have little raindrops. Hopefully those are coming through. Yes, they are. So you can see the little raindrops. So it looks like a little rainy scene, which I really thought was fun for the background of this particular scene because it's all about rain puddles. And then next, again, I changed out my thread color and we have a little puddle outline for our placement line. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our Mylar. So it's this right here. Mylar is so fun to work with. I've worked with it a few times. It's really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and just trim this down. Grab my scissors and just make it a tad smaller, because obviously when we're given a placement stitch, we will then be given an idea for how much material we're going to need. So I'm just going to trim and save the extra. Not sure if we're going to need it again in this quilt. Have we used it so far? I want to say yes, we did. Oh, on the little bumblebee wings, we used it. Okay, so now I'm just going to center this. I'm going to grab some tape, and I'm going to make sure this is really nice and taped down. This is something that will shift a little bit if you aren't careful. Whoops. Make sure I get it really taped down. Okay, 1 and 2. Okay, so now I'm going to return this to my machine and we're going to do the tack down stitch. That way it will, actually the tack down stitch and a decorative fill. So what that's going to do is it's going to, I believe, probably go around it. And then it's going to do a fill. And what that does is, because this is so delicate, we don't want to just leave it exposed like this. So we want to make sure, well, Kimberbell wants to make sure that they put more of a fill stitch on top of this, because then it's going to really tack it down, and you'll still get that effect of the Mylar and the pretty, you know, shiny iridescent look, but it will be nice and secure on the project. You'll see once it stitches out why it's important to have a fill stitch on top of this. Oh my goodness, how neat is this? It has little swirlies in it. Let me see if we can even get that on camera. It's hard to pick up, but it has some really neat little swirlies in it for their decorative stitch. Isn't that neat? But you still get that kind of iridescent look through the decorative stitch. Okay, now the fun thing about Mylar is you can kind of just tear it away. Sometimes I use the scissors as well, just because I'm nervous and I want to make sure I get a really clean outline and cut around, and that can be helpful as well, but you can really just tear it. So I'm going to keep my snips handy, but you just kind of tear it away. Ooh, that one wanted to actually kind of tear within the decorative stitch though, so I might actually, I don't know that I like that. It was wanting to kind of tear away at the inside, so I want to make sure that I let you know that, because you know what, I'm just so used to trimming it anyway, and it's so easy. You can kind of just run your little blade of your scissors along it. Now we're going to do something on top of this as well at the end. That's where our little blue vinyl is going to come in, but still, you know, maintaining a neat cut job around. Let's see if I can tear it again. Yeah, it tore nice there. Okay, so I'm going to go through and just make sure that I clean up any little area that maybe I didn't quite get even, but no huge deal. We're gonna have something on top of this as well. Okay, I'm gonna very lightly, staying away from the Mylar, but going around, just getting the little excess Mylar off if I had any little trimmings. Okay, now look how pretty that is. Isn't that neat? Ooh, let me see if my light can kind of get an idea for that. I think that's really cool. Okay, so now I'm going to use, the next step is going to be the text, and you can choose whatever you want. I think I'm going to do a nice gray. I think that will complement it very well. And I think the text says, sometimes a good puddle is all you need. I think that'll be pretty in gray. It looks like they may have it in gray as well. I'm trying to see. Oh, I don't know. Maybe in the front it kind of looks like a dark black or a black. But I'm going to do a gray. I think that'll be nice. It kind of reminds me of a nice gray day. And I think it'll just be a little bit softer. So let's go ahead. I'm going to change my thread. We'll do the text, which is super easy. And then we'll finish up by adding our last little piece, which will be the remaining embellishment for the puddle. my goodness, that looks so neat. I love it. Okay, so now I'm going to go through. There are a few places where we have some jump stitches, and so I'm just going to trim those off before I forget. And then we will move to the rest of our puddle, which is just placing our vinyl on top. So let me get these trimmed to perfection, and we'll continue. Okay, and I've seen my friend Carly Bell. If you haven't checked her out, check out her channel. It's amazing. But I've seen her use her tweezers to help when, I believe that's what she's doing when doing the jump stitches. And I have to say, I'm glad that I have given this a try too. That made it a lot easier than trying to just, you know, run the blade of your scissors underneath. So good tip. Okay, so oops, we have some more down here. So I'm just gonna grab my little tweezer to pull up. Ooh, that works so good. To pull up the little thread, snip, snip. I've never done that before. To be honest, I don't do a lot of projects that I find have jump stitches, so that could be why. And last little one. Usually you find it in text a lot, but so I must not do a ton of text. Okay, all set. Now for our final little, what do they call it at the end? Grand finale? Let's call it that. I am going to place this piece of vinyl over the puddle area. So I'm going to place that right there. Oh, actually I have some leftover tape, so I might as well save. And I'm going to tape that down. And now we're going to run our final stitch. This is the final time we're going to run the embroidery machine. Now I did change my thread color back to that nice teal. So that's what we're going to be using. The color I used underneath with the Mylar is the color we're going to use again. Okay, it's all done. I have to say this was a super fun block, and I know that I will definitely have a lot of people relate to my next comment, which is, don't you sometimes just want an easier quilt block? When I saw this, I thought that will be just a nice, refreshing, easier one after a while, because sometimes some of them have a lot of steps and they take a lot of time. And while this was easier, I appreciated that there were still very unique elements. So the Mylar and the vinyl, I thought it was still super fun. But every once in a while, you just need that breath of fresh air block where you think, oh, I can do that. That's going to be nice and quick and easy. Plus, while the text was running, that took a good long while, I could quilt together, or not quilt, but stitch together on my sewing machine in the background. I was stitching together some of my other quilt blocks. So that was kind of nice to have a couple machines running at once, all working on the same project. So now note here that there will not be any additional stitching. So we are done on the embroidery machine. And I tell you that because you will want to be mindful of your cutting at this point. So as you are trimming around and cutting off the excess vinyl, make sure you do a good job. So you want to make sure you're making some clean cuts, because we're not going to have any additional stitching covering our cuts here. So most of the time we can kind of get close enough and know that, you know, a satin stitch is coming next, but not this time. So go into it patient and take your time. And it'll all turn out really nice. I think I need to go back and just clean up right here. I think I'll probably go back in a different direction with my scissors, but this cuts so easy. So you can just use your creative decision on how you want to have this exposed edge. If you want to give more, you know, if you want to cut a little further away, you can. I'm cutting really close to my stitches without trimming my stitches, of course. Let me go back to that one little spot, and I just want to get a little closer, just like that, and like that. Okay, I'm happy with that. Okay, so now we can unhoop our block. Isn't that neat? I love it. And it looks, if you look, there we go. It looks wet, right? It looks like a puddle. That is so neat. Plus it has that fun iridescent look underneath it, which, brilliant. I love it. Okay, so we can unhoop now. Set our hoop to the side. And I like to put my block upside down for trimming off my excess stabilizer. So I just pull with one hand so that I can get a good idea of how to trim close. But this is the way I prefer to do it. Go ahead and just approach this any way that you like. I like to see where the blade of my scissors are because it would be just like me to accidentally cut my quilt block at the very end. Okay, now that our stabilizer is off, now we're going to trim down our block to its final size. Oh, it looks so good. I love the background quilting. So I'm going to bring in my rotating cutting mat. I'm also going to bring my block in. I like to flip mine over. It's just easier for me. We are going to trim this down to a finished block size of 6.5 by 6.5. So I went ahead and grabbed that corresponding size ruler. And I'm just going to make sure that it's exactly in position. And that actually looks really good. Now, I have reminded you in every video, make sure you install those little grippy feet. And I'll show you after I cut, in case you missed that. Make sure you install those. And I like to push out towards the edge of my frame. Just works for me. And then the glorious part of a rotating mat is you can just rotate and always stay, you know, on one side as you're cutting instead of going this way and this way. However, I have to admit, I do just fine without a rotating mat. I'm sure many of you do, but I wanted to give this a try, especially because now, as you can tell, a 6x6 in regards to a square block is probably, or definitely, the biggest you could do, but I tend to do smaller projects anyway. This has definitely been my biggest project, so be mindful of that too. You'll want to get a bigger rotating mat if you tend to do bigger blocks than this. Okay, so we are all set. Looks like I got a little crooked there, but that's okay. We're going to be sewing at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so I have a lot of wiggle room there. Thank goodness. And we are all set. So that is our final quilt block. Oh, the little grippy feet. Make sure you install these. Now they do come with your little rulers, but I did not install mine originally on my very first block I did, and they slip and slide like crazy if you do not have these little feet on there. So I put one on each corner, totaling 4, of course, and made a world of difference. So there we go. How cute is this cutie pie? I thought this was really fun. Again, it was kind of a breath of fresh air, a nice simple block, but with really fun embellishments that were fun to use, easy to use, and it's going to make for a really fun addition to the final quilt. Okay, so here is the entire row. This is the one we worked on today. Looks so fun and neat. I really love the shine that it has to it. And then we have some rain boots in the polka dot. We have some additional rain boots. I love the rain boots on the end, and they have a little buckle on them. Now I didn't sew them on yet. I just kind of slipped them on so you could see what it would look like. But the little functional buckle is so cute. I'm gonna go ahead and take those off before I do my additional sewing to sew this entire quilt together, but I really love it. I think this row turned out super nice. I think it's really, really fun. And again, now we are one row bigger in this quilt. I can't believe it. I feel like I was really intimidated to get this started, but now it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's really encouraging to see. So the bigger it gets, the more encouraged I am to keep going. And now we're going to start on row 4 in the next video. So I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you've started this quilt as well. I know when I first posted my first video, a lot of you said that you were starting this quilt. So it was really exciting to see that there are others that are kind of going along with me on this. But let me know how you're doing with yours, or if you're not doing this, let me know what you're doing in your craft room. I'll see you in the next video, and I hope you have a really, really great day.